Hey everyone, I'm out here at the field and I've got some mods to a Flite Test Bloody Wonder. So my goal on this one was to only use just the wings and the tail section and not use anything with the fuselage. I wanted to do something as an alternative to the bamboo skewers and the battery pack on the outside, so I wanted to do it all with 3D printing and carbon fiber arrow shafts. So here's an overview of the plane. So this is the final assembly of the Flite Test Bloody Wonder. So I'm using a B pack and I'm going to be running 3S 2200 lipos for this Maiden. I wanted a little bit longer flight time in case I wanted to use this for combat. So essentially the wings and tail section are stock. Now I like to run 2 servos for the ailerons, so I did cut that a little bit bigger so I can mount those twice in 2 places. And I'm still running the single elevator there. Now my goal was also to only attach this with no glue and only attach it with screws and maybe a little bit of tape. So the only thing attaching the wing to the fuselage is this plate here, where I incorporated a little guide rod to prevent flex on the for the elevator rod there. And there's 2 3mm screws. And on the bottom side, it just goes to this plate, which are anchors for these 2 carbon fiber rods. Now the battery box and essentially the entire fuselage is this here. So I incorporated a little lift tab, so you just lift that, otherwise it snaps into lock, so it won't come out. But if you lift this, you can slide this out. And the shape of the lid is incorporated so that it prevents the box from flexing outwards. So it kind of traps the edges when you slide the lid in there. Now the electronics, I'm just running a little, what is this? The Spectrum AR410 4-channel. So I split the ailerons up into 2 channels and the standard B-Pack 35 amp ESC. There's a couple of holes in there for the wiring to come through. And I did do a 3mm or 1/8 inch plywood motor cell here, or firewall. So that just slides up and out in case I need to replace that really easily. And it just drops down into these grooves. Hard to do with one hand. And then I also incorporated some smaller diameter carbon fiber rods. These are totally optional. So what you can do with these is they plug directly into the side of the wing mount here, which fits the front leading edge. And it travels down to these end plates, which kind of protect the wingtips. And I'm going to do some options with those, maybe with some whistles or some missile rails or something. But essentially just a single strap of tape around here, and the entire arrow front leading edge is protected by this carbon fiber rod. So depending on how this Maiden goes, if this works out for a combat, but you don't have to do it, you can just leave the rods out. They're not glued in or anything, just a single piece of tape holds on the wingtip protector and the carbon fiber rod. So we're gonna give this a go. We'll see how well it flies. It's only about 25 grams heavier than stock with just pure foam board. So let's get this thing in the air, see how it flies. That's a little, let me get a good handle on it. Feels a little rolly, so I could probably turn the ailerons down. I need definitely need some up trim, and the elevator is also pretty twitchy. Got big gust of wind there. Right now I definitely have to fly it until I tune this thing in. And I don't know if I can trim very well with the wind. Let's see. All right. Going with the wind here, and I'll bring it around into a full throttle pass. Whoa! It definitely wants to roll on its own. At 50%, it's pretty level, but it is twitchy on the ailerons. I can't tell if it's the wind that wants to make it roll on its own. Let's see where it's happy at. That's about 75% there. Maybe some more up elevator. I didn't set a timer for this, but I'm guessing probably close to 5 minutes. 5 minutes would be my limit with this bigger pack. I typically fly these B packs on 1300, but I went heavy to get some longevity out. I do have some crosswind, so that's probably contributing it to being a little twitchy on the roll. Let me give it some right trim. All right, let me bring it around. I'll do a little stall test. So I'm about 50% throttle here. I'm going to do some nose up, about 25 there, about 10% there, and that's off. All right, not too bad. No wing drop. Pretty good power for the weight. Oh, let me bring it back over here. I do need to put some paint or some tape on it for orientation purposes, especially in this sky. But I wanted to get some flights in while there's gaps in the rain. So let's see if we can land it and see where we're at with the power on the battery. I'm not going to land it on the tarmac. I don't want to break a prop, but so I'll try to land it over here in the grass. Not the tall grass, that grass. Oh. So what that lets me know is I really need to put some rounded edges here on the 3D printed fuselage. Now to cut carbon fiber shafts, there's a couple different methods in which you can use. This is an old archery arrow shaft, and if you get these used online, you can find used bows and things like that. Sometimes these are pretty inexpensive if you have your own arrow shafts laying around. These are typically higher quality. So on the higher quality carbon fiber arrow shafts, you can just simply take off the knock, and then you can use a knife to clean the fletchings on, which are just glued on. So once you do that, you got a pretty clean arrow shaft. You can use some acetone if you want to clean the rest of the glue off of there, if you need, or any decals. So what I'll typically do is I'll take and Sharpie a little mark on here, and then I'll grab my good old-fashioned cordless drill. And so I'll chuck up lightly on one end, And you don't want to grip it too tightly, so you don't want to compress your carbon fiber tube. And like I said, depending on where you source your tubes, sometimes you can get just blank carbon fiber standard rod from Amazon or places like that, and sometimes they're not as high quality as an arrow shaft. So the method I use is with just a little generic copper tube cutter. And using this works on arrow shafts, but it doesn't work on generic carbon fiber tubes because this will crush. In that case, what you'd want to use, or at least what I use, are these little X-Acto micro saws. And either spin it in the drill like that, or just throw it lightly in a vise and just saw it the good old-fashioned way. It wears out your blades, so you probably want to get a few of these if you're going to be cutting a lot of carbon fiber tubes. But this method here, the way I do it is, since I'm left-handed, I'll hold it in my left hand, and I'll just lightly tighten it down on the mark that I made. And so I hold it vertically like this, and sometimes I'll put a paper towel for the little dust that accumulates. You want to be careful with that dust, don't get it in your eyes, and don't breathe it in. But for one arrow shaft, I'll just go relatively slow with my RPMs. And just every turn or so, I'll give myself a little 1/10 or 1/8 of a turn with my fingers here and tighten the blade down into the shaft. And you want to be very patient, because if you get impatient, you start tightening it down too fast, you'll hear it start cracking, and then it'll start splintering as well. So just try to keep your RPMs low, and just like I said, every turn or two, give yourself a little 1/8 of a turn, and the blade will start working its way through the shafts, the fibers of the carbon tube. I think I'm about halfway through. And I think I'm getting close to getting all the way through. The resistance on the thumb screw is getting a little bit lighter, and I can see the far end of the arrow shaft start to flop around. You may hear some slight cracking as the fibers separate. And there you go. So there's the cut end there. And then here's the end of the tube itself. You can see, I don't know if it's going to focus on that, but it's not too terrible. Now the way I clean this up is I'll take it out of the drill, and I use these little abrasive sponges. You can get these at any hardware store. They're for sanding paint, pretty much for sanding anything. And I'll just hold it in one hand and hold it in another, and then I'll just start sanding the edge of this while I'm rotating it in my other hand. And I do it like at a 45-degree or 30-degree angle just to break the edge, and then I'll do it flat on the edge just to clean up the ends nicely. And then once you're done, you've got a nicely sanded carbon fiber tube. So you can cut them to length. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't generate a tremendous amount of dust, and it works really well. Again, carbon fiber arrow shafts are purpose built. They're a little bit stiffer. Some of the softer carbon fiber too, they're not all made the same. If you don't see it cutting, you see it crushing, then you're going to have to use the good old-fashioned micro saw. So hope this helps. All right, guys. After that Maiden, I made a few tweaks just to prevent some of the little bit of that damage that we saw. So what we have here is I've essentially increased the entire size. The one on the right here is the new wings and tail. So I've made it about 1 inch longer on the tail, and the wings are about 1 inch to 1.5 inches wider. It's about the largest I could make them with my laser cutter. And then on the fuselage, I made these little rails here to hopefully keep the prop off the ground and prevent the front edge of the battery or the fuselage from digging in. And because I made the wings wider, I extended the wingtip brackets a little bit so you can actually see the carbon arrow inside. And At a whim, I included these little whistles. So I made a little 3D printed funnel for them. They're on a dovetail, so they are removable. And what these are these little cheap, let me grab one here. These little cheap Amazon siren whistles. So we'll see if I get enough air pressure through there to make this thing whistle while it's in the sky. So we're gonna Maiden this. And I think those were the tweaks. Also, I added some fuselage holes to get a little bit better ventilation in there. And I stiffened up the motor cell, so I put a few less slots in there to make that just a little bit stiffer. I was a little nervous about that. And we'll see how it goes. All right. All right, I used the translucent filament here. You can actually see the battery inside of the fuselage. So let's see how this thing flies. CG check. I think we're all right. It's a bit wet out here, so I'm gonna have to land it in a little bit of the taller grass. So let's see. All right. Well, unfortunately, I don't really hear the whistles. Still a little pitchy. I have a crosswind, so I'm not sure if that's trim or that's just the wind. It is. I think that is trim that I need. All right, I think we're better. Bit disappointed that I'm not hearing those whistles. Oh well. I think a lot of this is just crosswind, unfortunately. What I am going to do is put a tape over that leading edge, the arrow shaft, in case that is messing with the aerodynamics. Like I said, I'm not a plane engineer, plane designer, so this is all just trial and error for me. But let's see. So I'll try to bring her down. Out of the water. There we go. All right, not sure how much information I gained on a day as windy as this, but all's well that ends well. Plane came down in one piece. I did discover that the whistles did not work for crap, but I built the dovetails into the wingtips, so I may play around with different dihedral, anhedral, maybe some ordnance. They just slide in there, and since it's a combat plane, who knows what I'll come up with. But yeah, having a flat wing, it's a little squirrely in this wind, and I flew for just about 8 minutes, a few seconds shy of 8 minutes. And this is my battery, 3.87 across the board. So I think I could probably pump that up to 8 minutes 30 seconds, and I was at 50% throttle the majority of the flight.
I'm not sure I'm ready. Oh, no, this is my bill. Well, they're watching me now. I was looking them on.
Whoa!
Good try. Right? love that shot. That's hilarious.
So here we are post Flite Fest 2025. This is my combat plane. I ended up flying, I think, 4 or 5 different combats. The first one, I couldn't pay anybody to crash into me in the air, so I do not have any information on how well these would stand up to a mid-air collision. I had a couple crashes. I had one where I crashed on purpose, and then I had 2 where I lost visibility, so hit the throttle cut and then just nosed down from altitude. And one of the last combats I did, this is the plane, and this is the damage that it received. It actually broke the entire fuselage, but the rods kept the entire thing together, so who knows whether it could have kept flying. It did break the plastic here. I did break quite a few of the motor plates, 2 or 3 of the motor plates, which are easy to swap out, so I'd rather break this than the plastic, but either way it's not a big deal. I added some stripes for visibility because I was losing orientation with all the different planes. And I simplified the end caps. So the end plates, I took out that dovetail for the whistle and I just simplified that to make it nice and clean. By the time this comes out, this will all have been uploaded on the Thingiverse that you could download the 3D printed components and then experiment yourself. One of the things I did is recognizing that it's also sometimes hard to find the exact same diameter carbon fiber shafts. I created duplicates of each fuselage and the end caps, and I did a range of sizes. So each set is in 10 thou different diameter increments. So it'll accommodate, I think, 4 or 5 different diameter types of arrow shafts, so you can have your pick depending on what kind of carbon fiber arrow you have. Like I said, 10 thou diameter increments and 0.25 millimeter. So you have you'll have a bunch that you can download and test to fit whatever size arrow shafts you have. So again, 2 bolts. I think they're 3 millimeter by 12 millimeter to 14 millimeter long with lock nuts, and then 2 pieces of tape. That's the only thing that hold this thing together. So enjoy, get your inventions out there, share them with people, and have fun in the hobby, guys. Take care. Bye.